Hi again, this is Nick Roach. Again, we're outside, a few gusts of wind. I hope we're okay. Tuck the microphone inside the shirt this time because the other video's got a bit blowy at times, so hopefully it's okay. I want to say a few words about choosing your timeline. For the spiritual people out there, the ones interested in following spiritual matters, you'll probably have heard about this before. It's in relation to the spiritual awakening that's meant to be happening now, the raising of the Earth's vibration, the level of consciousness, because everything is consciousness, everything is vibrating. So the raising of the Earth's consciousness, but most of the people, the population, they're dense. Their energy is quite dense, quite low. They're vibrating at a low level. They're angry, resentful, frightened, regret, greedy, selfish, and that's all quite dense vibration. Because as consciousness, their level of consciousness like that affects their physical vibration as well, as within so without. So that means they are on that lower vibration. And the Earth's vibration is lifting up. So the question is, how many people are going to go with the Earth's vibration? And how many are going to be trapped, still remaining in the lower vibration? That's the question. Now, my other videos recently talking about the awakening and the opening up of knowledge of how this place, society, has been working all these decades, centuries. And that's all very well. That can be part of awakening, a bit like the outer crust of something being broken open to allow the whole insides to be revealed. But if you're just picking away at the crust and you're realizing how society works, but you're getting into it, getting angry, frightened, worried, you're still stuck down in this lower vibration. And the Earth vibration is going up. And you'll be saying how awake you are because you know so much. Yet the whole time you're stuck down here. Knowledge can help you to raise your vibration if you do it with the right state of mind. Do it with a pure intention of raising your vibration, of opening up your mind, broadening your horizons, and you feel within while you're looking at it, reading it, hearing it, watching it. But as soon as you start to feel it's getting a bit heavy, a bit draining, a bit too deep maybe, whatever it is, then your energy is going down. Then you shut it. You might come back to it later, but the moment you've got the basics, you've got the idea, move on. Your point is to move up, not to be stuck down here. Now, when I first heard about choosing a timeline, it was literally the two timelines, is what they're called. It said the Earth, there's some conjecture, assumption, questions over exactly how it's going to happen because it's energetic, depends how it plays out. But for many, there's going to be the old lower vibration will still be here, and the higher vibration, the Earth, will move up. There will be literally two Earths. There's the new Earth with the higher vibration, and there's the lower, dense 3D version, and everybody else will be stuck back here still. Others are saying actually the 3D Earth won't be anymore, and all these people who can't make the shift will move on one way or another, I'll say through their own choice, because on a spiritual level, everything is done with your own agreement. But of course, it doesn't help you on the surface mind, because everything's quite scary up here. But so they will all be moved on and moved. They'll go somewhere, other places on the lower vibration, more applicable to them, their energy level. Whereas the others, those who made the 5D shift, the higher consciousness will keep going. And that's the two timelines, 3D, 5D. You choose your timeline. You choose your timeline. But how do you choose? That's what I'm going to talk about. Because it's not a conscious choice in that way. It's an energetic choice. It's about your own vibration that's going to determine where you slot in. Now, I've also heard it likened to a busy train station where lots of trains are just leaving the station and you choose your train. And it's said, and this is the bit I wasn't totally sure of before till I realised it's exactly what I've been doing my entire life, and that's why I want to talk about this. It said there is a timeline for everyone, their own personal vibrational timeline exactly relates to them. So there's a timeline for everybody because there's infinite possibilities. Everybody has their own personal perfect timeline for them. But I'd already heard there was two timelines. There's 3D, 5D, 3D, 5D. What's this infinite number of timelines, one for everybody? So how does that work? And then I realised it's exactly what I've been talking about for the last, well, since I started teaching in 2003, 17 years. I teach that as within, so without. And you can recap my 60 odd videos. It's all about this from different perspectives and you'll get the idea, hopefully. When, let's say, you're in an emotional situation, a difficulty, something's happened that upsets you, the mind normally says, that happened and I am now upset. There's a cause and effect that way. The situation comes first, then I get emotional. And I can get emotional, angry, worried, frightened, and the belief is it has no effect on that's over there because they're separate. Look, there's that and there's the feeling. And what I teach, and what you'll find if you start doing this, if you aren't already, is they aren't separate at all. The inner and the outer are the same energy. It's just projected outwards in form, colours, situations, but it's the same energy, absolutely the same energy. And when an emotional disturbance happens in you, seemingly as a result of a physical situation, when you come to know they are the same energy, one is felt as a feeling, the other is projected as a physical situation, but they are the same iceberg, I call it, and the emotion is a tip of the iceberg. The rest of it is creating your entire life. So when you realise this, and you realise the emotion, you can feel it, it's actually unconscious energy, which is why it is stored in the unconscious mind and brings up thoughts about the past and memories and worries and keeps coming up again and again and again in new situations. Because it does that, it lives in the past, it is the past, it's unconscious. If when you're emotional, if you stay conscious of it, aware of your surroundings, what you can feel, what you can see, what you can hear, but feel disturbance, when you're dealing with a situation, you're literally experiencing the emotion consciously, rather than going into the imagination and experiencing it unconsciously. And no one's ever told us this. It's such a shame because it's so simple. When there's emotion there, stay connected with your body, breathe, be aware of your surroundings, and the emotion is like cocooned in, is held steady in conscious awareness. And what happens is you are literally dissolving that unconscious energy, dissolving the emotion, making it conscious. Now, if there's only a small amount of emotion invested in that situation, as soon as you look at it like this, it's gone. And people go to me, Nick, it didn't work. I went to hold it and dissolve it, and when I looked at it, it wasn't there anymore. I said, well, it worked. Others, it takes a few minutes and it's gone. But if there's a lot of emotion invested in a situation, it can take a while. And it can even come in waves. You think you've dealt with it, and then a little while later it's back again as a new wave. But all the time you're going deeper, 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 dissolving more emotion and making it more conscious. And what happens as you're doing this, because it's the same emotion, the same energy creating your external environment and the circumstances of your life, you are dissolving, changing, having a direct effect on what happens in your life. As within, so without. And I've been living this since I was taught it as a suicidal 18-year-old. So it's a long time now. Coming up to 30 years. And I've written 4 books on it and everything else. But very few people are distressed enough to be prepared to experience emotion consciously. Very few. Emotion comes up and they think about the thing, they worry about it, they remember it. Even if they've been watching my videos or reading 1 or 2 of my books, they still forget. Whereas for me it was, this feels horrible. This feels so horrible, I can't live like this, what can I do about it? And that was every single time an emotional feeling came up. What can I do about this? And the amazing thing, like I said, is every time you do this, you dissolve the emotion, the external environment, the fly flying around, an external environment changes as well. And you actually begin to change the circumstances of your life energetically. You still take action when you need to. This is not a avoid it and just deal with it inside, because sometimes the problem is caused by us being too scared to take an action. So we've got to be prepared to do what we need to do physically, and at the same time face the emotion consciously. And the point I'm coming to, and I hadn't twigged this in their language before when people talk about timelines, every time I was doing this, I was changing my timeline. I was going along this route with a problem in my life, maybe lots of problems, and every time I raise the vibration, which is this unconsciousness, is a dense vibration. Hold unconscious energy, which is emotion, hold it consciously, it dissolves. That bit of energy which was unconscious goes into you, and you're now more conscious and a higher vibration. So every time in my life, the last 30 years, when there's been emotion present as a result of a problem, a difficulty, and I've stayed conscious, held it, the energy, I'm becoming more conscious, it's actually shifting every single time. And what would have been, the problem would have lasted for a very long time and lots of problems, I've now dealt with that one. And I'm now this timeline. And I deal with the problems. Something happens here. And I'm do it again. Be conscious, be aware. And the problems would have been all the way down there, because the emotion keeps creating new problems, and I dissolve that emotion, which gets through that timeline. So I'm now here. And you can imagine doing that every year, every month, every week, every day, all day for 30 years. Every time emotion arises, what's that? Not having that. That's unconscious. I'm going to face that. What do I need to do? Not accepting unhappiness in me. For myself and others, because when you're with someone who's in a bad mood, it feels horrible. And it's extremely selfish being in a bad mood, extremely selfish. It affects people around you. It doesn't just affect you. So I don't have moods. So every time I was being conscious when I had a difficult situation, the emotion would dissolve, the situation outside would evaporate, fix itself, go away, all was never a problem, and I'm changing again. So my timeline was always forever shifting. My energy was always raising. My level of consciousness or my vibration was always going up. So now I understand when people talk about timelines and you choose your timeline, you choose your vibration, and there's an infinite number for everybody. I realise that's what I've been doing for 30 years. I just never thought of it with regards to timelines. It's simply, this is consciousness, a dream, Maya, as they call it in the Eastern traditions, a projection of my own self, externalized, and I'm conscious. In this situation, emotion comes up, dissolve it, the situation evaporates, and it's gone. And these people are just saying there's infinite possibilities, which is great. So from that scenario, the two are not necessarily independent. The 3D and the 5D, and there's an infinite number, are actually the same thing. The infinite number refers to everybody anywhere, doing anything. And once you've got to that, your energy level will then determine what happens in your life with difficulties. And you have people in the same environment. In fact, what we've got now is the example I was going to give. You have two people in exactly the same physical situation. One might be suffering terribly and the other might be perfectly happy. So the timeline physically would appear to be the same for them both. And yet, one, it's a living hell, and the other is, this is lovely, I'm enjoying this. And I said the current situation because, of course, with the lockdown and the difficulties, some people are terrified of what's happening, whether it's to do with getting ill, or financial worries, which is another genuine concern. And others are just having a lovely time, enjoying the slowing down, the peace, having more time for their family, getting more out in nature, finding other pursuits, other interests and hobbies which they hadn't had time before, and they're loving it. So that's an example. One's timeline is not necessarily represented by physically what happens. It's an inner vibration. Someone can be very rich and very unhappy, and someone can be poor, have next to nothing, but be quite content. So this is not about physically what happens and what you've got, it's about your own energetic level. And so if you want to raise your timeline, raise your vibration, choose your timeline, it starts, I would say, with being conscious, which is what all my videos have been about, and my books and the website and everything else. It's about feeling the breathing, first of all, which calms the mind and acts as an anchor for the attention. And then you feel the body physically. And you can become aware of the physical sensations. And you can become aware of the sounds, what you can hear, and then what you can see. And like if you're watching this now on the screen, you become aware of what's around the screen, not just lost in the screen. So then you've got the peripheral vision you're bringing in, which can be nice, quite a nice trick actually, whatever you're doing, to be aware of your peripheral vision. And now, having got all this, be aware, we're not about holding on to all this, this is just a way in. Having got all this, just be aware that you are observing it. You're feeling the breathing, feeling the body, hearing the sounds, seeing whatever you can see, and being aware that you are observing it. Because the bit that's observing it is the point. So you, having consciously looked at everything, it's then that extra twist at the end to be aware that you are consciously observing everything. Like now. Some people might find this easy, but a lot of people I find, they find it very, very difficult. Having never done it in their whole lives for more than a moment at a time, and as soon as they think they've got it, the mind jumps in and goes, oh, was that it? And in that moment, they've already separated from it and left it and lost it. And then the mind will try to get it back by looking for it in its own mind and looking for it in its memory. I'll even say to people when they're in front of me and they're connected, I've got it, they're there, and I say to them, I do warn them first, it's not a trick I say, but I'm going to ask you what you're feeling now. And almost always people will look away because they'll want to go into the imagination and then think back to remember what it was like. They'll want you to speak direct. So I say to them, in the body, the breathing, be aware now, we're here now, what do you feel? And they'll go, they've lost it. In that moment, they lose it. And so I'm speaking all the time, I'm speaking from that space. Because every time you practice being conscious, you're making yourself a little more conscious, especially when emotion comes up. You dissolve that emotion and you become that more conscious. And spiritual enlightenment, God realization, self-realization, being actually awake, is to be and living in this space of consciousness where everything is your own reflection and everything is a flowing and outflowing of your own nature. And that's 5D consciousness, as I understand it. It's a term I've never, wasn't taught as I was coming up. It was just raise your consciousness, be conscious, and that's what I'm doing. So choosing your timeline is being conscious. As part of this, having got this in the bank, as it were, this is your foundation. This is the most important thing, being conscious and living as much as you can all day, every day. When I started, I'd wake up in the morning and say, right, I'm going to be conscious and aware all day today. And it might be mid-morning, I'd suddenly come back to my senses and realise, since the moment I said that thought in the morning, 4 hours later, I've been unconscious the whole time. But now I'm back. I'll hold it now. It might be mid-afternoon. So I might have only come back to my senses 3 or 4 times a day. But that's okay, because the intention was there. That's 3 or 4 times, which until then, I'd never done it. And then it might be 8 or 9, 10 times a day. But especially when emotions are there, you just do it then. And I remember getting to a point when it was every 10 minutes, I'd come back to my senses. And eventually, almost before I've lost it and I've gone into imagination, it's picked me back up again and woken up. So it's a constant not having to hold it, but it's always there, just ticking over. Being aware of being aware. So that's the first thing, being conscious. After that, because, and you can probably imagine for yourself, the sort of things that give you dense vibration, anger, resentment, fear, jealousy, regret, whatever. So to raise our vibration, my teacher used to say, acknowledge the good, which is quite a nice thing to say, and probably sums up everything. As well as being conscious, acknowledge the good. So if you're comfortable, you've got no pain, that's nice. Even if you don't normally have it, it's nice not to have it. If you're not cold, you're not hungry, if you've got plants around you which look nice, plants and trees, if it's a nice day, you've got people happy near you, dogs playing. If you've got something nice planned for the afternoon, the weekend, that's potentially projecting the future, but the knowledge is there. Just acknowledging the good, as opposed to focusing on the negative. So the two together will raise your vibration, and that will help you move into a different timeline. Being conscious will raise your level of consciousness. Being conscious when there's emotion there will particularly raise your level of consciousness. And being upbeat within yourself, something in my hair, I can feel something there. Being upbeat and appreciative and acknowledging what's occurring will raise your level of consciousness. That's choosing your timeline. But again, I say, raising your vibration and choosing the timeline is not about simply having more knowledge about how awful things are or how awful things have been. That's locking you in the lower vibration. And that's missing the entire point. And it has been said there are some quite big names who talk about the horrible stuff that's been going on as if they're there to help people, and they're actually being put there in order to give people enough information of truth to get them to latch onto it and be terrified and angry and keep them in the lower vibration. They think they're awake because they know all this information, but they're trapped in this dense fear, worry, hope, when actually, just don't look at it. You're aware of it, you've seen it, let it go. Now it's about you raising your consciousness, your vibration. You don't need to keep wallowing in the negative stuff. Once you're aware of it, let it go. The best way you can fix it and help any of this stuff, in and out, is by raising your vibration. Because as within, so without. As I said with a dream, on one level, we're responsible for everything that we dream. And you might have noticed if you watch a scary movie before you go to bed, you might have a nightmare, more chance of having a scary dream when you're asleep. If you put it in, you're likely to project it out again. And this is the same. If you keep putting negative stuff in your mind, it will hold you down in that negative space, and then your mind, your consciousness, will project that back out again. And now you're projecting the very thing that you've been worried about. Because everything is consciousness. Everything is you, your own being. So it's your responsibility to be as conscious as you can, as much as you can, as often as you can. And all that comes down to is being aware of being aware. Eventually you don't need to go through the breathing, the body, hearing the sounds, seeing the space, and then connecting. It's just instant. I'm back. Fly again. I'm back. And then you might lose it, and then I'm back. It's a flick a switch. I'm back. And you hold that all the time if you can. And from then, you acknowledge the good. And then, if you're moved to explore alternative narratives, whether they could even be negative, to accept as happened and let it go, don't hold on to it. But also otherworldly stuff, other dimensions, spiritual stuff. It could even be with nature, working with animals and plants and artistry, just anything that lightens you, opens you up. But start with being conscious. You need to realize your true nature as consciousness. Thank you.